How's everybody doing?
Good.
All right. Well, I'm certain, Clarence, one of the first questions likely has to do with home and away in it. But I've thought about that some too, but I thought very clearly with you, the biggest impact this game was our tackling and our ball hawking. And we're excellent at those two things, and we had a poor performance in both. You know, we had one forced fumble that we thought we got out, didn't get a recovery, but just our tackling, wasn't up to the standard we've set. That is our secret sauce, our tackling and our ball hawking, and we didn't have it. And that has nothing to do with home, away, turf, or grass, open air or dome, east, west, night, day, Saturn, Mars. Like, you got to have those two things down, man. And anytime we go, we get it on in that way, and I'm awful proud of our group. So to not have a performance that included those two things at our best, that was disappointing. And so we got real standards for those. And when we don't meet them, that part stings. And I thought that was the biggest impact in the game for us. And all that said, let's get it rocking with you guys.
Clarence Hill, Forward Star Telegram. You talked about the tackling. Was this a situation where they took advantage of your size, your small linebackers, or certainly they went with extra linemen and ran against your nickel defense and things like that? And did you consider using Micah at linebacker?
Well, I would say, size-wise, that's one observation. But we also play a lot of 5 down to try to cover, the 5 inside guys to go. So we use some of that as well. So in this instance, a good bit of those plays was more on the outside than they were on the inside. I'm talking about the missed tackles specifically. But as we're going in through it, man, it's disappointing knowing that that's one of the things we hang our hat on to say our tackling. And like I said, I'm awful proud of our group for that. So when we don't hit those marks, there's lots of things you want to poke a hole at to say where we're going. But at the end of it, man, it's got to be our tracking, the way that we wrap. And I'll give the running back credit too. He certainly was a cause of a lot of those missed tackles in that game today.
Dan Todd Archer of the ESPN. When you look at who you have this week, then Detroit, and then whatever happens in the playoffs, teams that run the ball, do you expect to be challenged now even more after what Buffalo's done against you?
Gosh, I think going in, we knew that was part of what they did, but they're also an excellent throwing team. We knew that with Diggs, quarterback, kind of the weapons that they had. So I wouldn't say it's more challenged than we had, Todd, previously. I'm certainly not pleased at all with the run game performance and the tackling and specifically, but I would say if we tackled better, the run game wouldn't have looked like it did. So it wasn't a case of, boy, we haven't seen that run or that scheme. So that's on those performances and sometimes stay with you longer and harder because when you just don't nail it, if it had been something that had really thrown you off to say, well, that's one we hadn't seen or we hadn't looked at, those would be more impactful for us. But I think as you get moving on to the season, I'm still at this point, hey, it's just about the opponent that we're playing. But at the end of it, man, I'm just not happy with the way we tackled.
But do you expect Miami this week to do more, try and take advantage that way? You have Detroit, teams that you're going to see. Do you think the copycat stuff that everybody talks about?
Well, I don't think so with Miami in that specific instance, Todd. And the reason I say that, they've already got a strong running game and on the perimeter go. Haven't been all the way through everything yet, but that's a big part of what they do. Even there, and same with Detroit. But past that, I don't look too far down the line. It's just kind of stay in the moment of this week and how to go. But I would go back to us saying, if we tackled better, our run performance would have been improved.
Saudis of The Athletic. Dan, you guys have spent a lot of time this season ahead, way ahead, things like that. Defensively, what's the challenge of playing from behind? And Buffalo scored first and just kind of stayed on it.
Well, I would say you certainly don't win it in the first quarter. So I thought, quite honestly, even at the half, I said this is our time to come back and let's get it corrected. The things we want to do, we can tackle better. Let's take the extra step. And so I didn't have a sense, of being behind or any of those spaces to go. I certainly felt that way in the fourth quarter, where maybe your 4-minute drill started a lot earlier than you would have liked. But I didn't feel any switch that we had to change of how we were going to play for going into it for a while. What I did feel was us not creating some momentum and creating plays that can give our team the energy and give the offense the ball back. obviously with a shorter field or ways to create some momentum to shift it. And so when you don't make those, I probably felt that just as much as anything.
How do you feel about momentum in general? How do you view that in terms of, winning the toss, deferring? That means you guys get to go set out the tone, and I'm sure Buffalo's looking at that as they get to offensively, vice versa whenever you guys
Yeah, I
have
think
offers.
if you asked most coaches defensively anyway, they'd say they'd rather defer and go get it going, and then you also get a chance in the second half to determine how you want to go play. And so when we get that chance, I always kind of get excited to start that way. I thought we'd have a chance at a field goal. We had a penalty there at the end of the first drive, which led to points at the end, which was disappointing. But by and large, when that happens, I'm usually a big fan of that.
John Machado with The Athletic. Dan, how much, when you look back at the game, do you feel like you guys were missing Hankins, and how do you think Mozzie did filling in for him?
I thought two of the guys from just the hitting and standpoint that stood out was DeMarcus and Donovan, first off. Those are two of our biggest hitters and our toughest guys, so no surprise that they played into that space. It was also good to get Carl some work inside. That was the first time you guys got to see Carl play, other than just a little bit here at practice. He's square, he's strong, he plays stout inside. But I thought across the board, inside, the guys played square and strong, but we just didn't create enough plays, to create some negative ones and knock them back further to go. But I thought from a Mozzie standpoint, I thought he played square and strong inside.
Joe Trahan, WFA. Dan, you talked about the play style, the tackling, the ball hawking, being that secret sauce. So when you correct things with your defense, because they've been so good at it all year long,
Yeah.
is it not necessarily the same message that you would have after a game like that? Or is it?
I would say it is, because, and here's why, Joe. They've created that standard. They've created the standard of ball hawking and tackling and what we stand for. And so if it was just a sign on the wall of what we aspire to be, I'd say, okay, but when that is who we are and we don't perform like that, that's a problem. And so knowing that that part of our identity has to come through in the way we drill it and the way we practice it, so when it doesn't, it stings. And the good news is they're the ones that created it. And so there's some good that's going to come knowing that these guys can really tackle well. They're really aggressive to go get the ball. And so when we don't do it, it feels uncomfortable. And that's how it felt for us after the game.
Billy Scruggs, NBC5. Can you speak to Mostert and Achane, those two backs, and what they bring to Miami's run game that you'll face this weekend?
Yeah, I think there's a relentless nature in the way that they can attack an edge. And I think when you're going against a team that has very good speed, you really have to try to build a wall on the outside. There's all sorts of weapons that they have, but the speed that you can use a running back from out of the backfield, in motion, use them in the backfield, in empty, and bring them back in quickly on jets, that's the type of speed that you better be prepared for laterally, because if they can get a crease, then they can turn it into vertically. So I think, for us going in, we'll have our hands full knowing that we got to set edges and really do a great job of tracking the player when they're out, on an outside run, to make sure that outside run stays going laterally to the sideline and not where they're able to turn it up and use all that good speed that they both have. But for years, I've been impressed by Mostert. He also has a violent nature about him. He can cut and plant, and he's just a physical finisher. So he definitely has been somebody that's had my respect for a long time.
Do you feel like McDaniel's run scheme is a little different than what they were doing in San Francisco, or is it the same here?
I would say there's a different element to it based on maybe the different style of players they have. And I think that's, the sign of a good coach, that they're going to feature, the players in unique ways to make sure they can go. So I would say their speed is different than most, not just at receiver, but at running back as well. So they'll try to use that speed and feature that in that ways. But yes, I would say there's similarities for sure, but I wouldn't say it's a copycat. Just here's what they were before and here's what they are today. And Mike's a very creative guy, and I had a chance to work with Mike years back. And so you can see that coming through of how to feature players and use them. And even starting back when Debo was, at San Francisco and played into running back positions, probably even a little bit more than when McCaffrey joined them. Talking about and Mike was a big part of that as he was, involved in the run game there. So he's got a big creative brain to use that, and they got a lot of speed to do it. So we'll have our hands full.
Calvin Watkins, Dallas Morning News. Run game aside, Miami seems to be very fast just in general with Tyreek Hill. How do you kind of try to contain some of that speed?
Yeah, I think these are going to be two fast groups going at it for sure. We've got speed and they do too. So there's at receiver and at running back to go, and how do they feature running backs from the outside, empty formations, and then obviously the vertical stuff down the field. So I haven't got all the way into it, but it's certainly something that the more you watch, the more you see and how they want to feature the players into that spot. Is there some matchups, or is it ones that so many different people are positioned in different spots? There's a little bit of the basketball spot with them too. A running back doesn't have to just be a running back, and a receiver doesn't have to just be lined at receiver. He can be in the core and motion inside or outside, and we've got a couple of players like that, so maybe a little gamesmanship on both sides of people aligned in different spots and see how we can deploy them.
Allen was hard to bring down. How do you see Tua in that regard with pressure and that kind of thing?
Yeah, I don't think they feature him in quite the same way, and the reason I say that is Josh would sometimes get out and then try to go create on his own, because is he going to slide or not? I don't know. And where Tua gets out, and probably the biggest difference is to which direction, because now you're facing a left-handed quarterback to a right-handed quarterback. So the natural side for a lefty is to get out to his left, to the defensive right, where Allen was just to the opposite. And so we paid a lot of attention to that, going into last week's game as it pertained to the red zone and third down. And I'm sure with Tua, we'll have to get into a bit of that as well. But what I do know of watching him, he's got great pocket presence, and can make him miss in the pocket. And sometimes that can be just as tough as anything, where it's not the speed to make, but he can make somebody miss and stay alive to make a throw. And if you have to play a long time against them, I think that's when some of the big plays can happen, because if he can extend plays, they've got receivers that can cause that separation, and that, I think, will be one of the real keys for us.
Big Blockberg, Cowboys Radio. Dan, you think we talk complementary football, and it's offense, defense, special teams, but on the defensive side, do you look at your own little unit as sort of complementary football in the sense that they were able to run the ball so well, you never really got a pass rush going? I think 7 of their third down attempts were 5 or less. 3 of them were 3rd and 1. So we were a little disappointed just in the fact that the thing that you guys do best defensively, you really weren't able to.
Yeah, but you've got to create it to get into those spaces. So yes, we do think of it in that way, that we all have to work together to create the spaces to go. And when we do that, we get to use some of our best strengths, which is getting able to rush and use our speed and the blitz package. And when you don't, you saw the results that weren't as good. And so we've been, trust me, tested plenty of times into that space, where teams want to run and we create some, longer seconds and third downs and able to use it. And so when you don't, it's bothersome. But yeah, I would say that's a good, accurate description.
Michael Gilkin, Dallas Morning News. When people think of sudden change situations, it's the offense turning the ball over, some of the defense has to come on the field. But when there's a penalty that turns a red zone stop into a new set of downs, or a 4th down punt that you're back on the field, or a 3rd and 19 that's now a 1st and 10, is it the same type of emotional training that you're looking for from players in those situations, and what is the message in those situations?
Yeah, I think it is, and the reason I'll share that, almost a similar scenario in last week's game, they converted a fake punt, a 3rd down stop that kind of brought the energy up. They created converted on a fake punt. I'm talking about Philadelphia, and we had to go back out and we got to stop. But you go stand back up and you go fight for it. And so when the same scenario happened here, it was just a different version of that. They got the ball, it was a 1st down, but you got to go back and stand up again. And that's our job as the defense, wherever it is, to go battle for it. So you just treat it as a new scenario, a new situation that's coming up, and you got to go get your stops again. So that's just part of it, and having the resilience and the toughness to go, hey man, blade of grass, let's go fight for it wherever it may look like. And I can think of examples from last year. I think it might have been Micah chased one down to the 1-inch line, and Law created a fumble against, maybe it was Detroit. So the reason I'm saying that, Michael, is like, you just go fight, man. I don't care where it is, how you get it on, but you just go battle for it. And if you do that, it can kind of just play in. Because I think if you get all sideways, oh, here we go, or whatever happened, man, you're not going to play very well. So when you go to take it, you go to take it, and you say, hey, let's go stop it and play. And we've been pretty effective at that. And so when you don't, like in times like yesterday, it gets magnified for sure to say, here was one cause that turned into another, and all of a sudden, you're here in the third quarter getting your ass kicked and saying, how did we get here? And you want to make sure, no matter what, every single time that we go and get it on, the tackling, the ball hawking, those things are on point. And so when we don't have those plays that can create them, it's hard to change the energy of a game that needed changing.
And the two bend back plays on the opening drive, one guard gets the whistle, was a little late, but nonetheless, when those happen, I suppose, one, your thoughts about it happening in terms of the offense being able to keep things shutting downfield, and two, the adjustment that follows from the coaching staff standpoint to play through the whistle maybe a little more.
Yes, I think you've nailed that. And so it was one of the things I certainly talked about right away to make sure, like, this is our identity. Like, that can't ever happen. And so when it does, it pisses you off. And it should, to say, that's not going to happen on our watch. And so when it does in that first drive, yeah, that definitely affected me, and make sure that doesn't happen.
Right.
Dan, Brad Sham, Cowboys Radio, this kind of follows up on that about the tackling. A lot of basketball coaches think that rebounding and defense are less about talent and more about desire and attitude. When you've proven yourself a good tackling team, you're not going to forget your technique overnight.
Correct.
And you have a game like that. Is that, in your mind, more about their desire and their approach and their concentration? What causes that bad tackling?
I would say it's probably in the concentration piece. And the reason I say that, Brad, more often, not all the time, but more often they're in space, right? Where it's a guy can create, or you lose a leverage to go. And so that could be one example. The other is, man, you're too damn aggressive. You're flying past. You're not taking the right angle. And so usually the truth is somewhere in the middle. And in this case, we needed to take the extra step, where we weren't going to, lunge and miss because we didn't have the right angle, taking the extra step. And that, to me, was what I was looking for in this game. But as far as pushing the pile and that, I just want to make sure every time that, people see us play this, you got to play fast, they play physical. And so if you have a push play like that, I don't like what that looks like. So we need to change the math on that and make sure those piles go back the other way.
In your experience, can it be productive? Obviously, it's all about the response, but can it be productive to be pissed off as a team late in the season, have something happen, a performance like this, and just have that type of a game? And I don't know if you're going to put a reference for that, but can it be?
I would say it can be productive, Michael, if you use it correctly. Anytime there's a lesson to be had, you can be pissed off and not do anything about it. You can be pissed off and make sure that when you're in that space again, that's not going to happen. So yes, I've seen that actually work both ways. To say you come off a performance that you don't like and you place blame or that, which I wouldn't see our group doing, but I've also seen it where it does galvanize in a good way to make sure that these guys know the work they put in, and possibly that's why they are so upset, how close they've come, the standards they've set. And so when we don't meet them, we are upset about it. And I would be hard-pressed to think of anything other than our guys to respond in an absolutely critical and accountable way to one another to make sure our performances are exactly like we want them to be. Doesn't mean you're going to win every time. We know that. That's the league, and that's how it goes. But it does mean that, when we go, we play to our standards.
Thank you.
All right, you guys have a good one.